session today with Malcolm Smith on how to become a great negotiator. My name is Hiba Abbasi, and I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the University of Manchester Middle East Center team. For those who don't know Malcolm, I'll just give you a brief history of who Malcolm is. Malcolm Smith is an alumnus of Alliance Manchester Business School and has lectured on a number of programs over the last 6 years. His specialties are venture capital, private equity, selling strategy, and negotiation skills. He has a degree in applied physics and is a member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. He spent 25 years in the food sector, covering flour milling, feed milling, milk, cheese, fresh chicken, and prepared foods. His role for the last 12 years in this sector was that of CEO of large international enterprises. Recently, he has become involved with the venture capital sector and has acted as a CEO, chairman, and most recently, non-executive directorship roles in the internet space. So please join me in welcoming Malcolm.
Thank you. Everyone, this is a very daunting prospect. I can see all my wrinkles. I should have worn my makeup, but never mind. I've got my wife here with me tonight. She's joined me in Dubai. I'm on business here. It's always a pleasure to be back in Dubai with my friends from Dubai. I've also got my great friend and colleague, of course, Hadi Nazari. He's done me the great honor of making me the chairman of his company. Thank you for that. And of course, Vijay, our CFO, is here as well. So it's a bit of a surprise me being here speaking to students because it's 2 years since I had the opportunity to do that face to face. And Rhonda, it's very kind of you to make the time to come personally as well. I really appreciate that. It's also lovely to see you personally.
Thank you for coming.
I've taken the opportunity to write some new stuff because you don't want to come and hear old stuff because some of you have been on the courses. I recognize some faces from virtual as well as 1 or 2 from live. Hopefully we're going to go live again next year. The UK has got a few problems at the moment. We've now got 44,000 cases a day, and we've got a new variant which is even more infectious than the Delta. But let's hope all that passes by, because Jane and I are going to see our grandson in Arkansas in November, so I'm hoping things don't go too bad before then. I want to talk to you today about some new stuff that Oscar Gomez and I have been writing in particular, because our focus has changed somewhat in the last few years. I'm doing an awful lot of international negotiations now, and that's been very interesting for me to work internationally. I'm also got the great honor to work with NHS in the UK, and my company XLabs, of which I've also been kindly given the chairmanship. We do all of the numbers for coronavirus throughout the UK, and we connect the laboratories in the UK with the NHS. So everything you see on coronavirus numbers comes from us. And we're about to enter the UAE. We've been given the great honor of being asked to work with the UAE on the same concept. It's a digital pathway, and we're entering the US as well. So I'm negotiating in the Middle East, which is always a lot of fun, the US, which is not so much fun, and the Far East, which is always very interesting. And I'm not going to say fun or not so funny. It's just a very different experience. So I want to try and talk to you about great negotiators. It's no good, the second place is the first loser in the world, always. It's no good just being good. You've got to be great because you're up against really good people now. And what we try and teach on the course and what we try and teach on corporates as well is how to become a great negotiator. And of course, it's not just about getting better outcomes more of the time. It's about how you approach this, both mentally and psychologically, of course. It's not just about the mental image you've got of the game plan you've got, about the plan you've written, the tactical plan. It's much more about the psychology of the negotiation, because none of us negotiate with Microsoft or with Netflix or an IBM. We negotiate with Malcolm, Jean, John, and Hadi. People. And people are different every time you meet them. So I'm going to ask you a question now, because it's always great to start on. First of all, what do you think makes a great negotiator? Anybody care to share their views on what makes a great negotiator? There's no problem if you don't get it right. No, this is not an assignment. Don't worry about that. All that rubbish you spend all that time on for your MBA. You shouldn't have said that for your MBA. No, this is about what you think makes a great negotiator. Any ideas?
Listening skills. Listening.
Listening. It's interesting. I was talking to Hattie today about if anybody takes one single lesson away from the negotiation skills course, it's called active listening. Not just listening, active listening. Because we all get ears and of course a mouth. Which one's the most dangerous? I'm not going to ask my wife because she knows very well. But one is most dangerous, and we use it more than our ears. Now, for me, my ears are dangerous in the wind because they flap a lot. But in truth, your most dangerous instrument you have as a negotiator is your mouth. Because the great negotiators know how to get you to open it and keep it open. And that's dangerous in the extreme. Any other ideas? But that's great. It's a good. If you've learned that and if you use it, you'll do better than if you don't. It's not enough on its own, but it's a great start. Anything else? This side, I kind of it all on this side. What about you? You look very intelligent. What do you think?
I'm going to say listening.
You can't say listening. You can't do that. It's going to be different. What do you think?
I'll say understanding.
Understanding what?
Understanding who you're negotiating.
Yes, you've got to understand the counterpart. Absolutely. That's critical because being able to communicate with your audience is different with every audience. So you must prepare for different audiences. I'm involved in venture capital. At the moment, I'm actually negotiating with a very naughty venture capitalist to give an investment to one of my companies. And they disagree with my price. Now, that always happens, doesn't it? But what I've figured out is I know how old their fund is, and I know they need to do another deal. So I've got a bit of information, which is valuable, which is your point about getting to know the counterparty. Trouble is, he's equally good and he's figured out I need the money as well. But we're going to go from there. It's a start. Any other points?
Preparation.
Preparation is, of course, the beginning of everything. And there's a one-to-one relationship between good preparation and outcomes. One-to-one. It's very unusual. So I'm going to give you that. That's a good one. So preparation and listening, terrifically important. Listening again, it must have been good because it was said twice. And know the counterparty, which is part of preparation. Any other thing, one more thing. Okay, well, I'm going to give you a few myself. That's what I'm here for, of course. These are my views based upon a bit of experience. So, the psychology of negotiations is mission critical. Great negotiators leave their ego at the door. It's not about them, it's about the deal. Most people try and beat the counterparty and try and be better than they are. That doesn't apply in negotiations because it's not about you, it's about the deal. So the first thing, this was taught to me by a student in Miami. He was a great guy, really smart sales guy, one of the most intelligent guys I've ever taught. And he said to me, Malcolm, it's all about leaving your ego outside the door. And I've used that phrase ever since because it's now my idea, naturally. But the fact is, if you take into that room your beliefs and project them onto the counterparty, you will fail more times than you will win because they're not the same as you. That's interesting. Somebody's playing a nice piano for us. So, another thing is don't let emotions cloud your judgment. Great negotiators blank it. They blank the world. They don't see this as an emotional issue. And irrational people don't get deals. Also, this is more often the case, this happened to me recently in the Middle East. I was trying to do a deal here. It wasn't with you, Hattie, it was with someone else. And they tried to abuse me by calling me an idiot and telling me that I was absolutely, well, yes, this is another one. Somebody called me very strange, didn't they? One of our counterparties said, your chairman's very strange. And I thought, yeah, that's about right, yes. But the fact is, they became very emotional. And what your job as a negotiator to do is to actually take the emotion out of it. This is the key. Now, this applies at home as well, because as Jean and I have been married for 42 years now, so it can't all be wrong. But if I get really upset with her, I ask her about why are all the clothes in the wardrobes, don't I? Which is not a very clever idea, because it causes a great deal of emotional trauma. because we've all got bombs we can throw at each other in the negotiation because we know each other so well. What does that achieve? Nothing. Doesn't get you anywhere at all. So if the counterparty gets emotional in a negotiation, it's your job to apologize to them. Take responsibility. The great book I've just read by a guy called Jocko Wilson. He was a SEAL and he was in the first Iraq war. And he wrote about taking responsibility for the counterparty, taking ultimate responsibility for everything that goes wrong. And that's what great negotiators do. If someone abuses me, I think I've annoyed them and I apologize and ask them what I've done wrong. The advantage of that is it gets them engaged again, and they have to climb down and start engaging with you. And the other thing, of course, is it takes them the responsibility for that behavior away from them and onto you, which means they're not losing face, which is a key issue. That's another thing, that it's about being emotionally mature. It's about emotional intelligence. Right. This is a very important one. Most of you, if you're involved in sales at all, most people in sales think that they're in a weaker position and that the buyer is in a stronger position than they are. That's nothing's further than the truth. It's absolute rubbish. The buyer often is in a bad situation. They'll just never let you know. However, if you walk into that room almost apologizing for being there, I said, oh, I'm sorry to waste your time. Well, if I was a buyer, I'd say, well, leave then. Why are you wasting my time? The fact they've met you indicates that they want to do a deal. So the key issue is go there with the presumption that a deal can be done. It may not get done, but if you go there with the presumption a deal won't be done, it never will be done. So don't think weak. And also, there's a thing called perceived weakness. And I don't ever think I'm in a weak position because it's about perceptions. My friend Oscar is a great friend of mine. He's also my lawyer. I don't like lawyers, but he's a great friend. And he said to me, perception is not deception. The counterparty's perception is not deception. If they believe that your position is much better than it really is, then that's okay. It's not for you to say they're wrong. And there's another one, for example. You're selling a Persian carpet. So I'm selling you a Persian carpet, and I've got a hole in the Persian carpet. Where should I stand? On the hole, right? I'm asking you a question. Am I lying?
Yes.
No.
No,
It's a question.
because I haven't been asked the question. If they say, is there a hole in the carpet? You walk off it and you say yes. And that hole was made by Xerxes' arrow. It was. This is a special hole. Okay, so the point I'm making is they've got to ask the question. The fact that I'm standing on the hole in the carpet is not it's not an actual lie. Their perception when I'm stood there is there's not a hole in the carpet. However, I haven't said that. When I lie is if I say there isn't a hole in the carpet. This is caveat emptor as applied to negotiations. This is not a lie. By the way, does everybody tell you the truth to their detriment in a negotiation? No. So it's not your responsibility to point out your weaknesses. It's their responsibility to find them. And that's the nature of negotiations. So we are living in a capitalist state, by the way. You know, we're not communists. It's okay to make money. So great negotiators see that negotiation is quite a different way to what normal people do. They see it as the art of letting them have your way. If you get someone else to perceive that the solution is something they've suggested, rather than something you're trying to ram down the throat, it's likely that that solution will be implemented correctly, and both sides will do very well out of it. This was written, by the way, by an Italian politician in the 16th century. It's as true now as it was then. If you try and browbeat the counterparty into doing your way, how do you think they're going to feel? They're not going to feel engaged. They're going to be upset, and they're going to do their very best to make it fair because they believe you've forced them to do it. If, however, they feel that it's partly at least their solution, then they're going to try and make it work. This isn't just a lot of words, by the way. This is very important. If you can't get this into your head, you will never make a good negotiator. You'll never do it if you don't get this single message. It's not about winning and losing. So, this is something I hear all too often. People think, oh, great negotiators are born, you can't make them. Absolute rubbish. Absolute, complete and utter rubbish. I was very fortunate when I was 30 years old. I was sent off to Harvard to learn about negotiations from two of the best negotiators in the world. And I went thinking I was great, and I came back thinking I was rubbish. And I just felt, I've made a complete mess the last 10 years of my business career. And I wasn't a bad negotiator, but I wasn't a great negotiator, and I wasn't even a good one. And believe me, not everybody can be a great negotiator. I'm not going to pretend that's the case, but everybody can be a lot better than they are now. And the way to be better is to learn how to do it. It's a skill like anything else. Everyone in this room has got a skill, different kind of skills, different kind of training. You didn't get good at what you do by accident. You get good at what you do by training. For example, I'm a great sports enthusiast. I mean, I'm not a great sportsman because I'm too old for that game now. But in the days when I tried, muscle memory was the name of the game. You ask any great sportsman, and if you read sports books, and I read about sports when I'm interested in boxing, and the fact of the matter is that people who are preeminent in their sport at the age of 10 usually don't make world number one. It's usually the ones who are number 5, 6, 7, and 12 in the pecking order at that age who make number one. And the reason is they want to get to number one so hard, they work harder than the number one who got there by natural skill. He doesn't end up as the world number one, often ends up out the game, because the people who get muscle memory are the ones who win, because they can deliver every time. And what I certainly try and teach all the people I work with on negotiation is to use muscle memory. In other words, find a way of preparing which works every time, all over the world, for every different discipline. And there is a way to do this. It's not complicated. It takes a bit of learning, but it's not complicated. So there is a methodology you can use. There's a very simple process. Everything's got a process associated with this these days. And Oscar and I wrote this about 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. The 5-step process is really nicked from a really great book called Shadow Bargaining for Advantage. And it was his idea, but we've bent it a little bit and made it a bit more applicable to what we think happens in the commercial world. And the 5-step process is really quite simple. And some of you have mentioned some of the most important parts of it already. And the fact of the matter is, it's not complicated because complicated things don't work in difficult situations. Funny, one of my greatest, I suppose I follow golf as well. And there's a guy from South Africa, I won't even bother telling you his name, it's a long time, it was sort of, he was playing when before some of you were born. A guy called Gary Player, actually. He was very good round the hole. He could knock it out, in those days, very few people could knock it out of the sand. And he was brilliant at it. And he won the US Open. And of course, in those days, the Americans didn't like getting beat. Well, they don't like it now. And it was all sour grapes. And one of the interviewers said to him, he said, you were really lucky around the greens today. That's why you won, wasn't it? Just lucky. So Gary Player smiled at him and he said, you know, that's absolutely correct. And you know what? The harder I practice, the luckier I get. Funny that, isn't it? So anyway, the point I'm making is you can learn how to get better, and you do it by training and you follow a simple process. And the 5-step process uses a preparation template. You mentioned preparation, and preparation is at the heart of this. And in fact, without preparation, there is no possibility of actually learning anything. Listening. See what I mean? You don't learn much if you don't listen. That phone will be the death of us all. So, before any negotiation, you do need to try and diminish information asymmetry. What does that mean? When you two of you walk into a room, you and your counterpart, you might be two teams, you know a lot about you, and they know a lot about them, but they don't know what you know, and you don't know what they know. And your first job as a negotiator is to diminish that information asymmetry in a systematic way and not by accident. Because there is no possibility of learning this without having a very simple, actually very powerful technique. You've got to understand BATNA. BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's like what happens if you don't do a deal. I call it the price of failure. So if, for example, if you're selling a house and you've got an offer from someone and you've got another offer from somebody else, if you can't do a deal with the person in front of you, you've got to accept the other offer. That's your partner. Now, very interesting situation occurred in the first Iraq War. The Americans went home and they realized that 70% of the world's oil came down the Strait of Hormuz. And that wasn't a very stable place. And they figured out they better do something about it, which is why fracking is such a big deal in the States today. And that's about that. They decided they had to become independent of one part of the world. It doesn't matter where it was. They had to become independent of one part of the world. We have the same problem today in Europe. Putin has been strangling European gas supplies in an effort to try and get the Germans to allow a second pipeline, Nord Stream 2, to be installed. And we're looking for partners to try and avoid that disastrous situation which will affect the geopolitical balance in Europe for the next 20 years. So everybody's looking for alternatives to the option that's on the table. And that's how important BATNA is. It's geopolitically important, and also it's important in simple everyday things. When you're selling your house, you want more than one buyer because that makes competitive tension. You're trying to get an auction. So first thing you have to understand is your own BATNA and be honest about it. And then you have to think about the BATNA of the counterparty. What alternative do they have? So if you're trying to buy my house, I need to figure out, have you got an alternative locally, which is better than mine at less money? Well, very possibly actually in my case, but that's but the fact of the matter is that's something I need to know. And the difference between my BATNA and yours is called a ZOPA, which is a zone of possible agreement. But we're not going to go into that, but this is the kind of stuff you've got to learn. Now, also there's a thing called interest. You might want to buy my house because it's near to a very good school. And that's often the case in the world today. People are looking for a house which is near a good school, and that affects the price of that house. Or maybe the house is near a very good road, very well connected, affects the price of the house. And if the interests of the person who wants to buy your property are directly impacted upon the situation round about your house, it has a significant effect on the price. And you need to understand that. And everybody's interests are different. And sometimes, I mean, how often have you talked to a man about, when you're trying to sell your house, you're talking to the husband. How many husbands make the decision about buying a house? Try none. Don't you kid yourself. The fact of the matter is, women make the decision all the time. All the time.
Zero.
Beg pardon?
It's zero.
Well, that's correct. Zero. Quite right. Now, the fact of the matter is, you understanding that is halfway to solving the problem. Because if you're talking to the person who isn't making the decision, you're wasting your time. Because after they've left, they'll have a discussion and you can't impact upon that discussion because you're not there. And that's why it's so important to look at influencers who are not present. And often it's not very clear. For example, in the Middle East, how many times can you get to meet the CEO of a company when you're trying to sell something to them? They won't meet you. Just not done. Because they're trying to impose a specific psychological pressure on you. And they can always come back and ask for a better deal later, because that's what actually happens. It happens everywhere, by the way, not just the Middle East. You're all nodding. It happens in the West. It's the same as the Middle East, same thing. Particularly important to get the site right team composition. People ignore that. Often the boss says, I've got to be present. Is that always a good thing? Is the boss, if your boss is in, you've got an answer. But is there always a good thing for the boss to be present in a negotiation? No, it definitely isn't. Why?
They feel like they need to give something away.
Yes, and also that you know they can. So if I'm dealing with your company and I know you're there, you're the CEO, I know you can make the decision, I know that. You can't say, I've got to ask somebody else. Well, like who? You're the boss, aren't you? That's the point, isn't it? And also, it means that the buying team has time to go back and think about it and find another alternative to hit you with. It's all about alternatives. So it's really important to have the right team, especially in this part of the world, because if a sales team goes with a junior team to a slightly more senior buying team, are you going to do business? Probably not, because it's disrespectful, isn't it? So there's cultural issues impact upon team composition. I could go through the things, but I would say this: the most important thing on that side is the assumptions. We all make assumptions about the possible alternative options that the counterparty might have and about what we can get. And 90% of the time, those assumptions are completely and utterly incorrect. You've got to check your assumptions in the exchange of information phase. Yes.
I have a question. Can you put this perhaps in the context of jobs interviews?
Yes. Have you got a job interview coming up? Is that what this is all about? Okay, I'll see you later on. $10,000. Moving on. But the fact is that is a key question. It is a key question. There's no point in denying it. If you are going for an interview, the first thing you should do is get all the alumni network. I'm being serious now, which is over 50,000 people, and find out if somebody's in that company, or at least know somebody in that company, and make a phone call. Find out what's going on, because the recruiter won't tell you the truth, that's for sure, because they're professional liars. Just like lawyers, accountants, politicians, without the slightest doubt. Some university officials, unlike you, and some lecturers. But apart from that, you've really got to think carefully about finding out what's under the bonnet, if at all possible, right? Because going in with information about what's currently going on in that company is critical. I was talking to a young man, actually from the university, who applied for a job recently. He was very honest with me, because he'd asked me for a bit of advice before he went. By the way, I don't normally help, but he was a nice lad, and he needed help. He definitely needed help. He took the job at a low money and found out afterwards they were desperate to get him because they hadn't got an alternative. So he said, "What do I do, Malcolm?" I said, "The best thing you can do, my good friend, is kick yourself, right, for being an idiot, and then threaten to leave immediately unless they give you a big payment." Because he now knew where the power lay. It's not a clever strategy, either on the part of the company or on him. But you know what? You only live once. No, you're only here once. This isn't the dress rehearsal, unless you're a Buddhist, in which case, good luck to you. But I'm certainly not a Buddhist. You know, you got to get as much as you can first time around, because there ain't going to be anything else. This isn't the dress rehearsal. This is it. We do negotiations all the time in the university, and for the same job. And everybody gets the same information, and we compare results across the world. And somebody in every class always gets a better deal than anybody else. At least one. And they all say, "Oh, well, that was luck." Really? And I show them from all over the world, thousands of people have done it. There's always one at the top end. Is that luck? No. Is that person going to have more money than you for the rest of their lives? Yes. Are they better than you? Probably not. So better learn how to get as much as you can first time around. And part of it is to get as much information as you can. And look on LinkedIn. It's a great place to look. Look on the website of the company. Find out what's currently going on in that company. Have they got a new contract? All that kind of stuff. There's a lot you can do. By the way, everybody thinks this is an awful place of the world, part of the world to work, because you're always getting kicked. It ain't easy anyway. Negotiator, of course, with the FBI.
That's practical knowledge.
It is practical, isn't it? You can use it today.
It's difficult to split the negotiation. We have a few people who are there, captive.
Well,
it's not like going into between, you know.
Also, the consequences of getting it wrong are quite significant, aren't they? Somebody dies.
That's
However, the thing about Voss in his book is it's about the psychology of negotiations, isn't it? It's all about the psychology. And there's two schools of thought. There's the Harvard school, which is the rational school, and there's the Chicago school, which is the psychological school. And I think you can combine the two. And I think Voss does that very well. Great book, great book. I'm delighted you read it. I think you will gain from reading that book. This is university stuff. You know, we sort of show how information asymmetry is diminished by using the 5 steps. The most important step, which nobody does, by the way, apart from 1 or 2 companies, one of which is Huawei, is the review. The 5th step is review. Everybody can learn from mistakes. And I like celebrating mistakes because you can learn a lot from them. And what you've got to do is be brutally honest with yourself about what you could have done better. And it's hard. It's really hard, to be honest. I was talking to Hadi just today about my son. I'm very proud of my sons, well, our sons. And one of them's just got a very major job in Walmart in the US, lives in the US. We're about to go visit him. And he works for the CFO. And the CFO had asked him to sort of do a series of reports each week and forecasting the weekly sales. By the way, he forecasts 100 billion of sales, 100 billion of sales. The bit of his company is bigger than most FTSEs. And he thought one day he'd do something different. And he wrote to the CFO, he said, I'm going to every week critique my forecasts to you and tell you where I got it wrong and what I'm going to do better next time. So she was very impressed. His boss is a woman, she's a brilliant woman. And without telling Sandy, she sent that report to the CEO of Walmart Inc., a $500 billion turnover business. And she told Sandy that she'd sent this email to the CEO, and he thought, oh my God, I'm going to get the sack, because it was all the things he'd done wrong. And the CEO wrote an email to Sandy. He said, thank you very much for sharing this litany of disasters with me, Sandy. He said, I'm so impressed, I'm going to get everybody who works for me to do this every week from now on. Because it's okay to make a mistake, but it's not okay not to admit it, and it's not okay not to learn from it. Sandy is not the most popular person in Walmart at the moment, I can tell you that, because no one likes admitting they've made a mistake. But you know what? Unless you learn from your mistakes, you'll never get better. Great negotiators ask other people. How do they negotiate together a lot? And we ask each other what we could have done better. And there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot of mistakes I make, some mistakes you make as well, amazingly enough. But the fact of the matter is, unless you face those mistakes and address them and learn from them, you're never going to get better. And great negotiators like to learn from mistakes. Sadly, most companies have a blame culture. Everyone says they haven't, right? But they have, haven't they? So all I can suggest to you is this. In your own business unit and with the people that work with you and for you, be honest with each other. And you've got to walk the walk as well as talking the talk. You can't screw somebody over if they've been honest with you. I was just saying, when I was important in the old days, when I had a proper job, I had very few reportees. There were 10,000 people working for me. I had 5 reportees. And I said to them, I'm never going to sack you for telling me the truth, but I am going to sack you for telling me a lie. And if anybody says to me they've never made a mistake, I'm going to sack you because you're an idiot. Because anybody who never made a mistake never made anything. Because we all make mistakes. It's okay. It's called learning. It's why you come to MBS. To learn, isn't it? All of those who are fortunate enough to be trained by much more intelligent people than me, like Kevin Jagiello. I love Kevin, actually. He's a marvelous guy. But we're very fortunate having some brilliant lecturers. And the purpose of doing a course, any university, is to learn from other people's mistakes. Case studies are about other people's mistakes. That's what we do them for. So you don't have to make the same mistake yourself. So I'm a bit passionate about this. So, never give information away for free. This is when you let your mouth flap and you start giving stuff away. One of our colleagues, called Hussein, is very good at saying nothing. And people always think he doesn't, they're always worried about what he's thinking. So as a consequence, they carry on talking in the hope of getting Hussein to say something. No chance at all of that. But the consequence of which is Hadi, who's sitting beside Hussein, is busy learning everything about the other side. And this happens a lot. And by the way, it's not a joke. It's real. So what I would say to you is this. Please don't give information away for free, but share it. If you're dealing with someone for the first time, what I always do is find out about whether the decision maker is in the room, because you don't always know. So what I say to them is this. I'd like to share with you our process of validation of a deal before it's signed off and contracted. And I'd like you to do the same with me. And then I do. I tell them what we do and they tell me what they do. If they've lied, it's a bit stupid, isn't it? Because I'm going to find out. So it builds trust as well. If you share information, it builds trust. And negotiation is about building trust. You don't do business with people you don't trust. But if you do, you're a complete cretin because it's going to go wrong. So it's all about building trust. And the way to do that is by sharing information. A lot of people give information away for free. And it's just the wrong thing to do. It doesn't help either side, you know, really, at the end of the day. So, anchors. A lot of people say to me, I know what I'm going to do. This happens a lot here, by the way. In the Middle East, an anchor is a price list, isn't it? You start off with a price list and everything is a discount off price list. That's how it works in the Middle East, isn't it? Oh, this is the price, but you're not going to pay that. Today, I went today to look at the price of going on a kayak. And we're very fortunate to stay in a lovely hotel, which thanks be to whoever's upstairs, somebody else is paying the bill. But the fact is, I went to see about the price of a kayak. And this guy said to me, and he showed me the price, he said 200 dirhams. I said, what's the price of a kayak? 200 dirhams. I said, no. What's the price of a kayak? Oh, the price of a kayak, that's 150. I said, why does it say 200 on the price? They said, oh, we always do that. How often does that happen in the Middle East? You know, even big companies start up with the prices and they work down. For you, I can give 20%. Just for today, mate, just today. I can't do it again. And by the way, I'm losing money at this. Trust me, I'm losing. Trust me, I'm losing money at this. And by the way, don't ask me for any more. Don't tell anybody else's price. It's so cheap. If anybody else finds out, I'm going to get sacked. I get sacked. How many times have you heard that utter crap? Moving on. Anyway, anchors are for dumb negotiators because how can you possibly know where to be at the end if you haven't done the work at the beginning? That's the point about anchors. A throwaway price is a throwaway piece of rubbish. So, precision. This is a new one. This is one that's been forced upon me by my lawyer friend Oscar, who is, if nothing else, a precise, pedantic lawyer who continually beats me in the negotiations for my fee, his fee, to me, I should say. However, I've learned something from him. How many times have you heard, the price is about 25 dirhams, or about $25, or 24 or 25 dirhams? And how many times you said, the discount's going to be between 15 and 17%. So what does the buyer hear? What does the buyer immediately think if you say 15 to 17%? It's 17 or more, right? Why did you say 15? It's a piece of, it's a nonsense. It's actually imprecision. Great negotiators never say that. For example, a great negotiator would say, the discount I'll be able to offer you today is 15.34%. Now, the other side of thinking, he must have worked that out. It's a precise number. It's almost validated. Think about that. It's different if somebody says to you 15 to 17%, isn't it? Different quality. Great negotiators do that. The buyer hears what he wants to hear. He'll always hear the lowest. For example, if you say to your sales team, and this happens when I was in charge of sales teams, it's always a bit of fun dealing with salespeople because they're all psychopaths, of course, just like me. But the fact is, I would say to them, if I ever said to them, right, the minimum price you can get for this product next quarter is $42. What was the price for the next quarter that we achieved as a company? Do you think? Is the answer in your phone? No. It's less than $42 because there's always a deal to be done, isn't there? Less than $42. So you've got to be very careful indeed about the way you craft or frame a deal. Very careful indeed. So great negotiators are precise for the simple reason sticks in the guy's brain opposite, because most people are very imprecise. Most people you speak to, most people you negotiate with, most people in business are very imprecise. And if somebody comes along down the street and is all of a sudden very precise indeed, you've immediately spotted yourself out as being different, and different people stick in people's minds. That is a fact. It's not my opinion, it's a fact. And you know it's true yourselves. So it doesn't, when somebody quotes a precise price, it doesn't mean there's no movement, but it means you control that movement, not the buyer. You've taken control. This is something we've just been doing a lot of work on, and it really, really works. It's something we picked it up from Chris Voss's book. Originally, I thought that's rubbish. I did, honestly, I did. I thought, well, who's going to believe that? So we tried it. And I thought, maybe he's not so stupid after all.
So Martin, so when you negotiate a salary, you don't give them a range, you give them, I want.
Well, actually, you can do it. It's an interesting one. That's a little bit different. Because what you can actually do is manipulate their understanding by knowing that they hear what they want to hear. Say, for example, you want, I don't know, around about 150,000 dirhams a week. Because you're a very smart guy. That's the minimum you'll be wanting to get. What I would say to you is, look, in fairness, I really want to work for you. And consequently, I'm prepared to come for 155 to 170,000 a week. They hear the 155. You've manipulated their thinking. Now, they might not agree with it, but they're thinking, okay, it's come down from 170. Wow, that's good. It's about manipulating bias. If you don't believe that, try it. It's actually very interesting. But you haven't, you know, it can't be totally stupid. Don't misunderstand me. But it's rather smart to manipulate them down by knowing their bias, that they hear what they want to hear. And they think they've got a deal because it's less than you wanted. And you're telling them that you're giving them less than you want because you want to work for them. Now, summarizing the deal, this is something that people don't do very well. And I've heard lots of people say, oh, we've done one over than there. We've got away with that. No, you don't. You never get away with anything. Because before it's validated, the deal's vetted by a lawyer or an accountant or some other parasite. Some other professional, sorry. I knew it started with a P. But the fact is, before they come back and sign it off, it's validated by someone else. And if they find out there's a bit of a stroke being played, what do you think you've just done to your relationship with that client? They screwed it. Lack of trust, and immediately they come back with suspicion. And then everything's hard work from them. Great negotiators say, look, I don't know if you've understood this, but this is an issue which you might want to think about. And you know what you've gained by doing that? You've gained trust because you've actually pointed to the elephant in the room. And they're also thinking, thank God I didn't go back to the office with that, because they're going to think I'm an idiot. So they're going to be relieved. And they're on your side. So this is not trivial, by the way. Don't leave a grey area, come back and bite your backside. And when they come back to you, the second negotiation starts where the first one finished, and it doesn't get better.
Aren't you letting them see the hole in the carpet then, no?
Yeah. If somebody said to me, you know, have you got a hole in the carpet? I would say yes. But if it's an interesting one here, I'm only going to sell that carpet once, aren't I? I'm not going to see that person again. I'll leave you to have your own imaginations on that one. Caveat emptor applies. That's called a distributive negotiation, which is one that's not done the same. Now, if you've got a client that you do business with all the time, you know, you're not going to do those things, are you, right? You're going to have to be pretty upfront and straight about it. But if, for example, I call it the Indian carpet syndrome. The Jean well knows I came back from India once with 3 carpets. I only wanted one. But this guy was such a good salesman, he absolutely screwed me completely over. In fact, it was worth going just to find out how bad I was at distributive negotiations. It's a true story. And I don't know how I got through customs at Heathrow because I was carrying them in plastic bags. And I came back and I thought, that is genius. And I'll tell you how he did it. And this is something I've always remembered. And this is absolutely on the level. He said to me, he said, Malcolm, I just want to build a bridge. What kind of bridge? An emotional bridge. He wanted to build an emotional bridge. It's really, really interesting tactic, which I've used several times to my great advantage since. So, review we've mentioned, it's step 5. If you don't do that, you're never going to get better. Don't ignore that. Nobody does it. And it's the biggest mistake you can make, because this is corporate IP. If your company has a habit of learning from its mistakes and storing that information and feeding it back through training, that is corporate IP, it's priceless. Especially if you trade with the same people again, because you've learned something for the next time. How many salespeople don't review the negotiation they've just done because they haven't got time? And they're up against the quarterly budget, aren't they? And they aren't making budget. And as a consequence, they just move on and they don't get better. They keep on trading at a discount off the price list and giving money. I'm going to give you an example. One of my ex-students, he was selling software to enterprise companies in the Middle East. And this is absolutely, I didn't believe it, but he's convinced me it was true. He went to an American corporation and he just was coming to the end of a 5-year contract for a software. It was ERP software, fairly big deal from a very big supplier to a very big customer. And he went in for the negotiation for the next, it was going to be only 3 years next time. I didn't want another 5-year deal. So he went in and he'd seen his boss before he went in, one of our students actually, very clever lad. And he got his boss to agree a discount he could go to get the deal. He walks into the buyer and the buyer said to him, before you start talking, sit down and listen to me. Now, this guy was very bright. So he sat down and listened because he thought I might learn something here. And the buyer said, I don't care what you say, I'm not going to do a deal with you. Even on the enhanced stuff, which you're trying to pawn off on me as good stuff, even this enhanced rubbish you've got, I'm not going to do a deal at more than 3% discount from the last price. That is maximum you're going to get from me. And if you ask for more, you're not going to get a deal. So our student said, I don't think I can do that. And this is a $25 million deal. That's a lot of money. So I'll have to go back and see the boss. And the buyer said, you better make it snappy because I'm not going to wait around. I want to get on, I want to do this. So he left the office. Of course, previously, before he went in to see the buyer, he'd had an approval from the sales director to take 20% discount for the next 3 years. Now, the clever thing he did was saying, I can't do that. Why was that clever? I don't know. Why was that really clever? For him to say, I don't think I can do that. I'll have to go and see the boss.
Because you set a limit.
Validation. Validation. He was implying this was almost impossible to do. Now, what he was not wanting, he could have said straight away, yeah, great. And he'd once done that before. And this is called review. Previously, a buyer made the same mistake and he said, yeah, okay, I can do that. And the buyer immediately thought, oh no, I could have got more. So what he learned was he had to make the buyer work for it. In fact, he did the next 3-year deal on a 2.9% reduction and improved payment terms. That's because he learned. That's the importance of review. That's actually fascinating and true story from this region. And the reasons behind why the buyer made that mistake are separate, and I won't discuss them today. But the thing that I want to teach you is he learned from a previous event that he can't give in easily because the buyer sees, oh no, I could have got more. That's a big issue for buyers. So finally, the great negotiator always stays one step ahead. So I haven't told you everything I know. So if I meet you across the table, there's things you're going to find out to your cost. However, if you want to find out all that I'm prepared to tell you, see the AMBS team, come on the MBA program, or see the elective, and we'll be happy to teach you more. But I'm not trivializing what I'm saying. There's an awful lot to this subject, and all I'm doing today is I'm giving you some of our latest thinking. Some of you who've been on the course would see some different thinking from what was on the course originally, and different emphasis. And this is a continually evolving process, because you learn as you go along, and I'm learning as I go along. So I try and feed the latest techniques and the latest ideas into the course, and also the latest commercial edge. Because when you negotiate for a living, it's not like you've just read it in a book, is it? You know, you're actually doing it. And there's a bit more to it when you're actually doing it for a living than just reading about it, isn't there? Because it's a bit dry in a book. When you talk to toe with somebody and your commission depends on it, it's a bit different, isn't it? It matters. So learning by doing, that's the mantra. So if obviously I've got any questions, I'm happy to talk to you about, but if you're interested in learning any more about this fascinating subject, which I love very, very much, just see the AMBS team and they'll be able to help you. Any questions you've got now? Because I know it's, yes.
Can I just one question on what you mentioned about learning from mistakes and making an audit, which is very valuable. Just curious about salespeople in general, because salespeople, when they're not the people that naturally want to accept the mistake, or let's say to publicize it. For instance, I lost 5 prospects. I got only 1. You know, the target hit rate. It's a very sensitive topic.
When was the last time a salesperson came in the room and just said, "I've just done a terrible deal"? You know, they all said, "I've just done a great deal, fantastic." It's only 50% less than they want. Oh dear me, you know, it was a great deal, right? They always, everything's wonderful, and they've always done well, haven't they?
Exactly.
This is interesting because any of you use a CRM? Any of you got a CRM embedded in your companies?
That's
the salespeople
is directly related.
Yes, the salespeople like filling them in. Not a cat in hell's chance. They hate it. They hate CRMs. Why? Because they can be monitored, right?
Yeah.
They can be found out. And yet the CRM is the best friend of a great salesperson. It's the best friend. If it's honest, it's truthful, it means that you can learn from mistakes in the past and move on and get it right next time. And the job of the senior team is to persuade salespeople they're going to make an awful lot more money if they fill in the CRM. And they will. They really will. Because they won't make the same mistakes over and over again. The problem is everybody beats the salespeople. Behind you, you've got our CFO, you see. Accountants hate salespeople, right? I never forget, I was in my old boss, Fred Duncan. I used to work for Grampian Food Group. I was CEO of the chicken division. And it was funny, I used to go to Fred's office, and Fred was a wonderful guy. He's still a wonderful guy. But on his desk, he used to have one motto, and it was, nothing happens until somebody sells something. So I walk in one day, and I had the CFO with me. You remember Ian, he was right on a wet weekend, wasn't he, Ian? Anyway, so we went into the boss's office, and Ian's always taken offense at this. Nothing happens until, he always thought the accountants were the kingpins. So Ian said, it's got nothing to do with that. He said, it doesn't matter until it gets paid for. And Fred said, isn't that interesting? And of course, immediately Ian was panic stricken because he thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. And Fred said, and when was the last time you sold something then, Ian? Oh, you haven't sold anything. That's interesting. So if I sent the accountants out, how long would it be before we went bankrupt then? He said, your job is to clean up after the sales team. And that's true, isn't it? And the problem we've got with sales teams is we don't square up with them and be honest with them. We give them sales targets, we give them quarterly targets. Most often, a margin isn't a part of that, it's just turnover. We measure the wrong things well. It's not a salesman's fault if it goes for revenue, if his compensation is built on revenue, is it? It's natural. We should spend more time cultivating within. In fact, the difference between a salesperson and a negotiator is salespeople focus on price and negotiators settle on value. We're looking for margin. Salespeople are looking at price. I mean, it's the killer. If you only focus on price to the detriment of value, you'll never move forward. And that's my message, really. It's up to us to train salespeople to think differently. And most importantly, to train buyers to think differently. Because buyers are actually incentivized on price, which is why they're always looking to get the price down. And yet, if you said to a buyer, look, okay, price might not go down, but I can reduce the cost of doing business by holding it a different way. Maybe that's another way of having the same discussion. But that's right, you've got to use some intelligence to do that. And we don't give salespeople enough credit. Because believe me, without salespeople, we're all dead. Because nothing happens until somebody sells something. How many of you have stood in front of a buyer, taken a lot of abuse, and come away with a deal? That's a great feeling. And those people are valuable. And I don't think we invest enough in them to explain to them there's a better way. And one of my great mantras is to teach salespeople how to get better deals by thinking out the box a little bit and thinking about value rather than just a simple thing like price, which is easy, isn't it? It's the easiest way to get a deal is to drop price. It doesn't do much for your bottom line. So hopefully that might go some way to answering your question. It's a very interesting question.
No, it's a real life question.
It is. Well, that's where I live. I live in real life. I'm in on business, you know. I'm actually doing a bit of trying to do a bit of business, but I'm not sure I'm always succeeding, but I'm always trying to do a bit of business. And I'm fascinated by business. But you know, there is a clash between academia and business, and this is it. You can learn how to become a great negotiator. I believe you can learn how to become a great negotiator. And part of my mission to do this, in fact, when I came back from Harvard, I said to you, I'm going to do this when I retire, didn't I? I said that. And this was more than 30 years ago anyway. I'm not going to go into how much further than that. But I said all those years ago, I was going to do this because I felt it was important, because I'd learned so much. Any other questions? Because we're getting towards the end of time now. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you see different dynamics if you look? I mean, now you talk very much, let's say, in the corporate world, but if you go, say, public sector, or let's say between nations, or between, let's say, union and corporations, where, let's say, there isn't perhaps a monetary value.
It's not as up. Well, there are very big differences now. I used to negotiate with unions because I was running union shops. Very different kind of discussion to a kind of commercial discussion with a buyer in a supermarket, for example. Look, the reality is in every case there's a partner. In every case they've got an interest. It might be different, but it's still driving the behavior, isn't it? So that's why I try and be agnostic to the situation. Look, it isn't simple, and it's a very fair question you've asked, actually. As far as governments are concerned, I don't want to go near that because they're a bunch of liars. So how can you deal with a bunch of liars? And you know, they're only interested in getting voted in again, aren't they? They don't care about the people that vote them in. They couldn't care less. Shouldn't have said that, really. Anyway, moving on. The fact is that you've got to take the case in front of you and analyze it for what it is, understand the interests, understand the drivers, understand the people who aren't there but do influence it, and use the same techniques. The fact that it's non-monetary is not that relevant, really. It's a deal, isn't it? And often price isn't the biggest deal, you know. Price is only part of the thing. Consignment stocking, payment terms, on time in full, how long till it gets delivered. At the moment, once again, my son was talking to me from Walmart. They were paying $2,500 a container from China this time last year. Today, without price, they went to one of them. I won't say what they said. Anyway, they were quoted $25,000 for the same container. 10 times more. Circumstances change. You have to think about a new dynamic. And it isn't always money, of course. Difficult if you're negotiating with a monopoly, that kind of gets tricky, that.
Yeah.
But you're looking at interest, same thing again. You've got to build a USP. You've got to have a reason for them doing business with you, and actually value works every time in that scenario. Value works every time rather than just price. Very much so. A very smart question. I hope you're not in one of my workshops. But it's it's true, isn't it? It's so different.
Yeah.
But if you use the same techniques, you just use them a slightly different way, it still works. Because you're not negotiating with the government, you're negotiating with you or me. And we're driven by different things, aren't we? Any other questions? No? Yes?
If you can just quickly tell what has been your most memorable negotiation that you've ever done, like,
Most memorable negotiation I've ever done in my life.
or interesting?
I don't know that I can think. There is one actually. One of the more interesting things I've ever got involved with was a very, Jane remembers this one. Remember that aluminium smelter in this part of the world? One of my ex-students rang me up, said he was a production director for an aluminium company, I won't say where, and a plant had been built, a $500 million plant had been built in this part of the world. It didn't work. And the turnkey company that had built it had got the previous CEO to sign it off as if it did work. And then he'd gone off somewhere else with a wad of money in his back pocket. He was never seen again. And I was asked to intervene. Now, this company was part of a nationalized, in this part of the world, nationalized enterprise. It was a government enterprise. And they didn't want to get into a big argument. And this Japanese company said, oh, we don't think we can help you on this. And so they sort of trawled around the world to see who can make this plant work. And they found a Spanish company offered to put it right for 50 million euros. 50 million euros. So they rang me up and said, well, what can we do? So it was around about Christmas and I wasn't going to go out there. So I said, I'll do a paper exercise for you. I rang my friend Oscar in Spain. We found out the company that had offered to do it for 50 million euros was bankrupt. They didn't have the faintest idea how to do it. And it was a total scam. So then they said, and so I told them, they said, what are you going to do? What can we do? I said, look, go back to the Japanese company and say this, look, we'd like you to have a go at this. We know that you don't really want to tackle it, but would you please do it? Because if you don't, we're going to have to go to this American company, who are their biggest competitor. So the Japanese company said, yeah, we're coming over, we're going to play. Did the job for $5 million. What we did was, we used peer pressure of the major competitor and said, if you don't do it, well, I'll get them to do it. And of course, when they've done it, I'm going to have to publicize the fact that you couldn't and they could. Peer pressure, a bit naughty, but we got it fixed. The biggest problem was, when I took this deal on, I didn't realize how big a deal it was. So the guy said to me, one of my ex-students, and I will never forgive him, but he was a very clever lad. He said to me, Mark, why don't we do a deal now? Tell me what your price would be for doing this. So I said to him, a small number of thousands of dollars. And then I found out I'd just saved them 45 million. That's lack of preparation. But that's the truth. And I said to Gene afterwards, I'm never going to do that again. Now my friend Oscar, he recently did a negotiation. He did a negotiation class for one of our students who worked for a German company. The German company asked him to go over. And as you know, there's an issue with us doing consultancy work at university. So he asked if he could do it. So they said yes, and did it himself on his own behalf. So I said, Oscar, what have you got for it? And I told him up front what he's got to ask for it. And of course, he'd gone for half of that. And then I said, but I presume you got half money up front and half when it was finished, eh? No, I didn't get that. No, didn't get that. And he wasn't going to say any more. I said, what did you get, Oscar? They said it was company policy to pay 90 days after the work was done. I said, company policy is bullshit. Written in the just doing the same deal with the same company again, and he's got different terms, and he's got more money. And he said, I've done very well, Malcolm. I've got a lot more money out of it. I said, yes, but Oscar, you do realise that you could have charged that much times 5. He said, how do you know that? I said, I've just been researching the price of negotiation skills courses. He said, it was quite true. But we share with him. He was very happy because we were helping one of our alumni. So it was fine. But the thing is this, we talk to each other about mistakes we make so that we don't make them again. And we all make them, even trained negotiators make mistakes. It's just human nature. Right? And it's usually because we're trying to help somebody. If you want to do that, that's fine. But understand what you're doing before you do it. Any one more question before we go then? Because Rhonda's been very kind. Normally she disappears 5 minutes in because she's bored with listening to what I've got to say.
I'm learning.
I'll get away with it. There's not much I can teach you about negotiation, that's for sure. I know from my past experience. So,
Malcolm, online.
Yes.
Online, we've got one here. Negotiating across cultures brings about its own challenges. Do you have any tips negotiating across cultures, in particular with Chinese companies? That's from Alexander, I believe.
yes. Don't use the silence tactic in China. Because they'll stay there, they'll sit for 5 days. It's the one I use in the West, but I don't use in the East. And a more serious point, that's actually true, by the way. A more serious point is it's the same everywhere in the world. If you treat people with courtesy and respect and give them dignity, you will do well everywhere in the world. If you treat them discourteously, you will do badly everywhere in the world. And what's also true is if you're seen to be courteous and you know, dealing with people respectfully, and you make a simple cultural mistake, they'll know you didn't mean to do it, and they'll accept the fact, how could you possibly know everything about Chinese culture? And they'll give you a break because they like you. So you treat people decently, you'll do fine all over the world. In fact, one of my sons said to me one time, how do I differentiate myself from everybody else in a genius company? I said, look, be likable. Be somebody that people like, because they'll give you a break when you make a mistake. They'll cut you a break. It just so happens he's a lovely guy. He's not like me at all, is he? He's a lovely guy. He's a lovely guy. He's like his mother. And the fact is that he gets on well because people like him. And also he's a bit of a genius. But so is everybody else in his company. The difference he's got is they'll cut him slack because he's taken the time to develop trust and relationships. And that's what negotiators do. Anyway, I think we're done, are we?
Just about, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to come out of your busy lives, and I hope that
Thank you much.
for giving me this opportunity as always.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
I know it's only because Kevin couldn't come. I know. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter about it. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for actually attending the session. We hope you've actually found it useful. I'm sure you have. Obviously, we always appreciate Malcolm taking the time, especially on his personal time as well. As many of you will know, this is the 15th anniversary of the University of Manchester Middle East Centre. Many of you here are students and alumni, so I'm sure many of you will know about that. As part of the 15-year celebration, we actually decided to support an initiative that's led by Dubai Cares, which is called Adopt a School. So they are looking to build a school in Nepal for about 90 students, and they'll build about 3 classrooms, and they'll fund training for teachers as well. So this is something that's extremely important to us here at the university, and we're looking to raise around 165,000 dirhams. And I believe we're over a third of the way there already, which is actually quite remarkable. We're obviously looking for as much support as possible within our own community and further afield as well. Many of you here worked for international, multinational companies. If any of you are looking to support these types of initiatives, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us at the university, either myself or my colleagues here, or you can go onto the website at manchester.ac.ae/social responsibility, or SR. We also have leaflets on the table outside. On the table, you'll actually have a QR code on them if you want to go straight to the Dubai Cares website as well. And we really do appreciate any sort of support and help with regards to this particular initiative. Especially that many of you know that the university is now ranked first in the social responsibility ranking as per the Times Higher Education, which is another formidable achievement by the university. So it is part of the university's DNA to give back to our communities and to sort of forward sustainable development in many different countries, especially in terms of education as well. For those of you who don't know, Dubai Cares was actually set up by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum back in 2007. He's obviously the Prime Minister of the UAE and the ruler of Dubai. So as you can imagine, this is something that's extremely important for this foundation as well as us. So if you are looking to help and support us, then we are here to help, and you can go on the website as I previously mentioned. Is there anything we want to play, Tony? I think there's just a quick video, just a quick sort of brief, but if you need any further information, we're obviously here to clarify any of these particular details.
Sound.
It's fine. Fantastic. So, brilliant. Yeah, so the website's there, so manchester.ac.ae/SR if you need any further information. With that being said, I know that many of you are looking forward to actually